everybody. Thank you so much for joining and for registering for this webinar for this special edition of the Envase webinar series, when we're talking all about DrayMaster and our bid tool and our ability to respond to RFQs quickly. I'm Marina, Envase Digital Marketing Project Manager and your host for the day. And today I'm joined by Travis Barnier, the sales lead for DrayMaster.
Hello.
And don't let his title fool you. He's been with DrayMaster since it started as a simple drawing in 2012. Travis has been in the drayage industry for over 27 years, including as the president of a company overseeing brokerage, trucking, and intermodal terminal management. From working closely with him, I can tell you that if he knows you, he truly has your back, and he does that for all of his truckers. We also have a special guest joining us to offer his expertise, Andrew Adrian, the principal engineer for DrayMaster.
Hello.
So that you've got to know us a little bit, we'd love to get to know you to make sure that what we're talking about is actually a fit for you. So to launch our first poll and let us know kind of who you are. We also like to have a little bit of personality up in here. So you'll see some of our polls have a little funny final answer. Do your best to answer honestly. We'll have a few other polls coming through. But as you answer this poll, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're doing this webinar, why we're talking about our RFPs, and why we want to turn them into rewarding future partnerships. If you're on this webinar, you're probably in the trucking or freight space, and you know there's been a lot of uncertainty recently. The labor situation on the West Coast finally seems to have settled down, in the US anyway, but no paperwork has been signed, so there's still room for negotiation and disruption. On that point, all you have to do is look at Canada, which has been on and off strike for the last couple of weeks. Shippers that have been moving goods from Asia to the East Coast may be looking at coming back west, especially as the drought may be causing headaches. Fees for now and possible turning away of ships soon in the Panama Canal. However, even the folks looking to move goods through the West Coast may see headwinds since warehousing and distribution space can still be tough to find. In other words, everything seems pretty uncertain, and it always is in trucking. But to alleviate the uncertainty, over the last few months, we've been telling carriers to keep an eye out for rash requests for information, requests for quotes, requests for proposals, RFPs. We call them RFPs. RFP season is coming in 2023 and just about 5 months later than normal. And so that's what really brings us here today. We want to show you how to turn RFPs from really freaking painful into rewarding future partnerships. And I promise you, you won't need to hire a PowerPoint specialist or a wizard to make it happen. So today we're going to wrap this poll up. Let's see where we're at. We'll share the results. So we have a lot of DrayMaster customers here looking to get more out of the bid tool. Some people are just interested in learning about the bid tool for RFPs. And some people don't know DrayMaster, but just want to know what it's all about. And one person's here for a lunch break, so let's enjoy that. And then we have a lot of medium fleets joining us, a few small fleets, and a few enterprise fleets. And luckily, everybody knows about trucking. Everyone knows how to pronounce drayage. I myself, when I came into this space, thought drayage was pronounced drayage, and we've come a long way from there. So today's topics, what we're going to be talking about is A, what's DrayMaster, overview and introduction into why DrayMaster was created, what it can do for you. Then we'll move into what role DrayMaster plays for your operation as a full rate solution. And then for the meat of this webinar, we'll be talking about the RFP bid tool and best practices for responding to RFPs fast. Then we'll move into how to get the most out of your rates, key features for you to DrayMaster your rates. And then we'll move into a Q&A answering all of your questions. And as we go through this webinar, please use the Q&A function. We might answer them during the webinar if they come at the right time, or we'll definitely answer them all at the end. And so with that, I'll let Travis take it off.
Excellent. Thanks, Marina. So really, what is DrayMaster? If you're not familiar, I notice we do have some existing customers in here today. If after the fact, if you want specific training on anything we talk about, we'll have links to sign up for that. But overall, what is DrayMaster? DrayMaster is a rate management platform specific to the drayage space. When in 2012, we thought of the concept, because Tom Burke and myself, because having a trucking company in the drayage space was frustrating on how often we quoted rates, whether it was on a phone call or email, and not ever guaranteeing we're going to get those moves. So it was a lot of time we spent with the unknown. So we thought, why is there's a website for LTL, truckload, place where you can go to get rates anytime, day or night. Why is there not something like that in the drayage space? And that's really where DrayMaster started. We went from a simple drawing of what we envisioned it to actually realizing what customers really wanted once we dove into it. And that's really what's gotten us to a place where we're at today. It took us about 5 years before we actually had something to start selling to the customers, and in this case, trucking companies. And our customer base is the brokers, forwarders, 3PLs, and then of course you guys on the trucking side that has a place to manage all of your drayage rates. And with that, it's the line haul, the five key pieces we focus on are line haul, fuel surcharge, tolls, chassis rental, and chassis positioning charges, so that on every quote, it's all the known charges up front, and in the end, that lessens invoice discrepancies. So that's DrayMaster in a nutshell.
Thanks for telling us about that. And if anybody has any questions about what DrayMaster is, I'm sure we'll answer them during this webinar. But again, if you have any outstanding questions, just use the Q&A function. Now, Travis, can you tell us a little bit about the other key features that DrayMaster does have?
So yes, here you see the bullets, the tariff truth. Really, it's having one location to store all of your rates, whether you want to automate the process and have customers get rates on their own, or still keeping full control, waiting for the call to come in or the email to come in and still manage the rates, but then anybody can quote it. The bid tool, which we'll go over in more detail on this call, but how much time is actually spent, waiting for that to come in when the customer says, hey, can you give me these rates on these 2,000 lanes? And then trying to run those without tools and automated processes can be very time consuming. So we take what usually is weeks and converted them to minutes or hours, depending on the size. And then quote rates, having a professional looking format that you can send to your customer, no matter the size of the company, it really puts everyone on the same playing field. Customers love the fact that they can read a quote, and no matter who they get the quote from, if they're in DrayMaster, all the pertinent information is in the same location, making it easier for them to read and understand. The rate analyzer, I'll touch briefly on that as well, but for every trucker that comes into the platform, whether they were invited in or coming on their own, goes through a rate analyzing process, because we want nothing but clean data going into the system. So trucking companies that already have a rate tariff will clean that up, meaning kick out misspellings, incorrect city-state combinations, invalid zip codes. And then we also fill in all the gaps that you may be missing opportunities on within your service territory, which falls into the rate groups there. Next.
So also have the tools that was tools for rate management, kind of the fundamental reason DrayMaster was created. But with that rate management comes a lot of opportunities, and that's where the tools for growth came in. And so these are a few of our things.
Yeah, so with the My Directory listing, it allows you to put all of your information in the directory, which we'll show in a second, and be able to be seen by other companies. We have large forwarders that are using DrayMaster on a global scale. So maybe you're only working with one of their offices. Now you'd be seen by several of their offices, and having the information about your company within one platform that they all can see. Next is community rates. Any trucking company looking for more business in specific lanes has the ability to post what we call community rates. And that's going to allow other brokers, forwarders, 3PLs, anyone on that side of the business that does a rate search that happens to be in the same service territory you cover, you will now show up as an option for them if you display your rates in the community, giving you more opportunities for those specific lanes. The customer portal add-on, that is for a lot of companies will put it in their email signature or a link on their website that says get live FCL quote, and allow their customers to click on that and not enter into DrayMaster, but then focus on running a rate search from point A to point B and getting a rate returned at any time with that professional looking quote. The newest feature in the top right there, you see capacity calendar. That is fairly new for us, but it's now allowing truckers to put their capacity on a weekly basis. You can go as far as a month, but really how many calls and emails are you taking today that ask you what your capacity is like for a specific region or lane, and then responding. And in DrayMaster, when your customer does a rate search, they can automatically see what you have listed. It's more like a stoplight. Red, you're booked that day. Yellow, it's getting tight. And green, you have capacity. So just simplifying the process. And then viewing the history. How many times do you quote the same company or same person at that company, but you never see the business? We don't delete any quotes or history, so you always have access to it. Some truckers will tie that into their CRM using our API, and then using that information, understand why they may be missing out on opportunities with their existing or prospects for customers.
See, I think this is really cool, and how I conceptualize this is almost like a networking site with your rates, right? So no matter how good your rates are, sometimes you just can't get them in front of the right eyes. But when you have community rates, when you can display these things in all the searches, people who are looking for service in your territory, they're able to see your rates and potentially start new partnerships. But now that we've talked about the tools that DrayMaster has, we have to show you all of them, but since we have only so much time together, let's jump into what we came here for, and that's the RFP bid tool. So Travis, will you jump into DrayMaster and give us a little tour?
Yeah, so right here, we're in our demo site on the trucking side. So in our demo, we base everything out of Chicago, in case we dive into specifics, because I get a lot of questions on how the ramps are set up there. But first, over here is the, I want to go into the My Directory. Over on the left, this is a listing that a lot of companies will put information from their website, or just a snippet about your company here. It'd be your name and logo, information about your company. It's going to show your customers the ramps and ports that you serve, what type of equipment you own, or if you're using local equipment, such as this. And then you could have your capacity listed here. So Marina, actually, after that, did you want to do the poll?
Oh, yeah. So as we jump into the bid tool and responding to RFPs, we have this one question that we want to ask. How long does it take to respond to an RFP for you? Say you got an RFP with 1,500 lanes, one person on your team, how long will it take them to respond to that? And we have our own personal thoughts, and also since a lot of us have had experience in the trucking industry, we know kind of where we stand, but it's also really good to see this to understand if this is still the same, and also if everybody kind of shares the same experience. We've got a lot of answers. I'll give it a few more seconds to see who else can get their input in. Ooh, and we're seeing, I'll share them right now. We're seeing a lot of 1 week answers. So that takes a lot of time out of your schedule and a lot of time out of your team when they could be doing so many other things to actually keep your business moving forward. You can see it's kind of staggered out like this, but it all kind of averages out to about 1 week. And those that are 2+ weeks, that's just a headache. So now I'm extra excited to show you this bid tool. So Travis, let's get into it.
So over on the left from your dashboard, under the nav column, you hit bid tool and run search. You also have the download queue, because every time you do one, no matter how small or large, it will go into the download queue. But basically you come to this screen here and you can name the bid just for ease of keeping track of it. And again, it'll be saved like that. Over on the right is find rates for. Because you can have different rates with every customer you do business with if you wanted to, you want to make sure whoever you're doing this RFP for, that you're pulling it from the correct rate tariff that you have that's specific to that customer. Maybe this is the default plus 5%. Then you can download our template. That's the example I'm going to give you, that I'm going to show here. However, if you can take the format that the customer provides it to you and upload it here. And as soon as you do, DrayMaster is going to ask you for help identifying the headers and how you want that data to be exported. And then otherwise, you're going to use, sorry, 1 second here. Our template, which with our template, you just get line 5 as the header. So you can, again, if you're using ours as opposed to your customers, you're going to put in the city and state combination or the zip code. You don't need both. Either one is fine. Enter the ramp or port, city and state where the moves are happening, and that could be variable. The import or export or a combination of both. If you know the steamship line, you'll want to choose it, and that's mainly for most accurate chassis pricing, but you can say default if you don't know what the steamship line is going to be. And a simple yes or no, is there any has or overweight in any of these lanes? If you say yes, it's going to bring in your flat fees that you have associated with those. It won't bring in permits and things like that. Once you have the information filled out, you can upload that into DrayMaster. DrayMaster is going to go in the background and look at every lane that you listed, and it's going to compare that to the tariff you're pulling from. So it's going to say, okay, based on that tariff, here's your line haul charge, your fuel, chassis related charges, and that's going to be chassis rental and positioning or splits. And then has overweight or tolls, if they do apply, will be listed. And then what the total amount is. And I always tell customers that this is a great starting point, because this does not take into consideration any volume that the customer may have in those lanes. It's just showing you what your rate is for that customer for that specific lane. And then you can work with the customer, sharpen your pencil if you need to, and go from there. But then it's a matter of, maybe you're not going to bid on everything. Maybe you're only going to bid on specific lanes you're really pushing for. And then you would provide whatever lane data you needed to back to your customer in their original format.
This is awesome. And Charles, I just want to clarify. So I know you can use the template that we do provide. And so that would involve people typing in, all of the cities and everything. But if the shipper provides you with, already an Excel spreadsheet, that makes the process even easier, right? You don't have to go ahead and reformat it yourself. You can upload it, and then DrayMaster will assist you in making sure that all the fields are correct so that it pulls all the information correctly. Am I right in saying that?
That's correct, yes.
Well, that's awesome. So if we're thinking about if it takes, a week for one person to quote 1,500 lanes, right? And instead, if we can upload this into the bid tool, or if we can fill in the spreadsheet, even if you are filling in the spreadsheet from scratch, you're not going through, your long book and list of all of your rates, try to pull it and then write it out. And with this, you actually even get all the details with it. So if you are to send this over, your customer is going to understand exactly, what goes into that total. So it's not going to be just a blank sheet of numbers. It comes off presentable. It has all the information in it. And I mean, how much time does it save? So say we run a 1,500, lane RFP through the bid tool. On average, how long will that take to jump out?
On average, you're looking at about 40 minutes. We actually did one of the tests we did was with a trucker in the up and down the East Coast. And when we first rolled out bid tool, and they received, it just so happened to line up perfectly because they received a bid package from a major steamship line. And I asked them how long it would take them to do this process without DrayMaster. And I was informed that it would take them about 2 weeks on average, because they're going to have to run one lane at a time. So it just so happened that it worked out that we did this as our first trial run. It was 1,849 points on the RFP. They uploaded it, got the rates back to that customer within an hour, and 45 minutes later, they were awarded 1,600 of those lanes, which goes into the fact, like, first to market, because they're waiting for rates quickly or wanting the rates quickly. Now, that's not going to happen every time, and we don't guarantee that, obviously, but it just goes to show you how much time can be saved by quickly. You already have your rates, you buy a customer, and you can quickly pull them.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool, because it's saving time for your team, but then it's also increasing the likelihood that the package that you do send back after putting in all of that work, that it actually, will award you that business. So it's kind of twofold. We get a question from Peter. He says, I may have missed it, but how is FSC calculated if you have to use their matrix?
So we can, you can actually calculate, Andrew, unless you have a different response, but you can actually calculate and adjust the fuel accordingly, because most commonly, if a steamship or a customer specifically is dictating what they're going to pay for fuel, as opposed to allowing the trucker, then a lot of the truckers will increase their line haul to make up some of that difference. So you can use basic calculations with it in Excel to make.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we allow you to create an unlimited number of rate profiles, which would include creating different FSC tables, either generated based off of DOE values, or manually set at a specific percentage. And so you can create, say, specific customer requires you to use their fuel. You would then create a fuel surcharge specific to that customer. And then when you ran the bid tool, you would make sure to select that customer, like Travis had shown, from the drop down, and that would be based off of that rate profile for that customer.
Right here.
That's what you're referring to as rate groups, and kind of choosing, which customers get which rates, or maybe that's dictated by your customer and the better relationships that you have, or the newer ones that you have. So you can customize it for anything, per any request. If anybody has any other questions about the bid tool, please ask now. If you are a customer that does use the bid tool and have any questions about specifics, answer them. We have both Andrew and Travis here to answer them live, but also if they come up afterwards, they're both there for you to reach. They're both there to help. We want to make sure that you're making the most out of this tool because, especially as we said in the intro, RFP season is kind of having an extra peak right now, and we do want to make sure you're able to take advantage of that opportunity with freight being so slow. And in the past, year, or maybe I would say since the beginning of this year, the spot market going down and smaller carriers getting a little tight and not being able to get that business, people parking their trucks, trucking companies going down. When this opportunity comes knocking, you do want to be the first one to respond so that, just like Travis said in his example earlier, if you're the one to respond in 45 minutes or an hour, and that shipper likes your lanes, likes your rates, you're going to get that business. Again, no guarantees, but we want to set you up for the most opportunity for success. From what I can see, there's no more questions right now, but I know we had about half the people in this webinar that were looking to, just understand more of what DrayMaster can do. And I know we went over the features kind of in high level, but Travis, is there anything that you could go through right now since we have DrayMaster open to show us a few of the other things that DrayMaster can do for rate management and then also growing their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start out with the rate analyzer that we had talked about earlier. And again, this is for any trucker getting set up with us. If you're in the system, you already went through this process, but just high level for those that may not be. If you have a rate tariff, we actually run it through our analyzer, which bumps up against PC Miler, practical truck routes, and we clean up any misspellings, incorrect city-state combinations there may be, and any invalid zip codes. And we'll show that to you in an error report. And then we point out things like this, column J. You may have if you see a longer red bar, maybe you're charging too much. Longer blue bar, maybe you're not charging enough. This is all on your own data. We're not comparing you to your competitors. For this example, this trucker, this was a real tariff we helped with. They're charging $400 to go 16 miles. All other locations that are 16 miles are only charging $200. There could be a reason for this. We don't know. We just point it out in case it is a mistake. And then the next thing we go through is column G here. If this section is blank, that means this rate was provided to us by you as the trucker, and that lane and that rate. If there's any verbiage in here, that's basically stating that, hey, this location is within your service territory, but you don't have a rate defined for it yet. So why don't we start filling in some of these gaps? And we do that with zip match and mileage match here, basically saying Gillum Enclave, Georgia is not on your tariff, but it does have the same zip code as Forest Park right above it, and you're charging $250. Why don't you add Gillum Enclave and charge the same amount? So we start filling in those gaps. By the time it's done, you as the trucker, and no one else is out there doing this either. So keep that in mind, that by the time it's done, you end up with a completely digitized rate tariff that you don't have to share and, worry about it ending up in your competitor's hands. It's all digitized and then stored in DrayMaster, and you start providing rates from DrayMaster from that point forward. This is just a tariff. Then we go through the fuel surcharge. How do you want to set that up? Do you want it to be manual? Is it based off of what the customer is deciding? Do you want it to go out to the Department of Energy and update automatically on a weekly or monthly basis? We can do all of those set parameters. And I think it's important that based on setting up and getting your tariff and all of your rates in here, once you're set up, a lot of truckers will keep that control until they're comfortable with how the rates would be displayed. So now a customer calls or emails you wanting a rate. You're going to come over to quote rate on the left. I just want to show everyone the quote process and the quote that comes back. So here it says find rates for. Again, based on the email or the phone call, who are you talking to? And you want to make sure you quote them off the proper tariff. And then let's say we're looking for a rate for an import. If I know the steamship line, again, I want to choose it, but I can say not sure at this time if I don't know. Include customer information on the quote. I do recommend this because it's all searchable for you at a later date and really helps you to make smart decisions then. Let's put in test. And then
does it customize the quote then to, if a customer is going to receive it, are they going to see their name on it? Is it going to be personalized?
It can, I'll show you on the results here, but it just comes up, it will show up on the quote, but it also shows up on my dashboard as well. So the container pickup location here, because it's an import, it's basically saying what city or specific ramp is it coming into. And I'm going to say it's coming into Logistics Park in Chicago, and then delivering locally. Again, city and state or zip code is fine. And then I'm going to say it's a 40-foot container, not has overweight or a reefer. And I just say find rates. Here I get the results back. This is a high level breakdown of my charges. Maybe like this terminal surcharge, for example, I don't charge anymore. So I need to make an update before I send this to the customer. I can click on customize here, make any changes over here on the right. Everything on the left is showing me what my rate's set at for that. But maybe I need to change my fuel to 45%. And down at the bottom, I am not going to charge the terminal surcharge in the bottom left. So I'm going to turn this off. You can see the total amounts now $999.92. Over here, it's now $1,020.55. In the bottom left, I can also add as many additional charges as I want. In case I haven't had a chance to update my rates for whatever reason. I can say save and view quote. Now, when I say issue quote, what it's doing is assigning a quote number in the top right corner. It's going to show the customer how long my quote is valid for. Most truckers will keep their full tariff valid for 1 year, with the understanding that their quotes are only valid for 30 to 60 days, most commonly in DrayMaster. And then right underneath that, because we get the truckers to list all the known charges up front, the main thing that could or should change only is the fuel, and it shows when the fuel is going to update next. And then here you can see who it was quoted by and also who it was quoted for here. And again, that goes into the specific background where I can view at a later date if I need to. Then the pricing details here is where we list all of the known charges that we possibly can. Underneath that is the accessorials that may apply, like driver delay. We don't know if it's going to happen till the day of the move, but if it does, we know, the customer knows what we're going to charge them. And then as a trucker, you have a free form field down here at the bottom for the disclaimer. Put any information in there that you want your customers to know about. We also allow you to put links in there to drive customers to your website if you store the data there and you want them to get the information from there. So I wanted to show how we get the rates in and how the search works.
Oh, and then also I see up there we have 3 options for how we can show this quote. You can email it, you can print it, or you can save it as a PDF. So meaning you can send this to any of your customers, or you can save it for internal use. You can print it. If you like to keep hard copies, if you don't really want to save the trees, you can print all of them out and then have an entire book of it. But you're not going to need that because you can include anybody on your team in DrayMaster. So they're not going to need to refer to a hard copy. All of your rates, your entire tariff lives in DrayMaster. So any team member can go in, and even if they just want to know for themselves, oh, what's our rate for this lane? They can look it up and find it, or they can generate the quote and save it so they have it for future use.
Right. So for this example, like quote 1218C, that's now on my dashboard. So if I close out of this and go back to my dashboard, you can see here you got on the top search results, and right underneath that recent quotes. So the search results up top and off to the right, the dark blue, that shows how many times I've appeared in a search, whether I did this on my own as a trucker or I've automated the process, had my customer come in and do a rate search. It's going to show me what lanes they searched as well. The light blue means that somebody actually, whether it's myself or my customer, clicked on issue quote, because once you click on issue quote, it assigns it a quote number, and that's what puts it down here to recent quotes. Now, if you look at the top for May, for example, I can click on the 30 or the 16, but I'm going to click on the 30. How many times I appeared in searches. And then I can see, specifically, this came from the website. This was us internally. I did that rate search. But if I'm filling out who it's quoted for, I can also see that here. So you can start using our parameters and our filter up top here to start giving you knowledge based on how many times you're quoting a specific lane to a specific customer, and then start using that data to better understand what you need to do with your rates to adjust to get more business in that lane.
Well, that's cool. And so you can also see who's quoted it, but then you haven't seen that business. Like you mentioned too before, you spend so much time quoting and receiving quotes, but that business often never comes through. But here you'll be able to see who does actually quote you for lanes, who actually searches for you. And then maybe you can figure out, deduce if this person quoted me so much, this person searched me so much, why aren't they actually doing business with me? Is it because of my rates, or is it something else? And so that allows you to, just do kind of that analysis on your business to understand, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong?
Exactly. And the more you know about your own rates, I mean, honestly, we may get into this, but it's a lot of truckers, no disrespect here, but don't realize how much time they actually spend quoting rates on a daily or weekly basis. I mean, for some companies, that's a full-time job for one person, just nonstop. And doing that on business, you don't know that you're going to get. And, which brings me to the next feature, which is Web Connect, because let me pull that on the screen. Web Connect is basically, we provide this URL link for you. And that link can be put behind a website button that says get FCL quote, or, even a lot of truckers I've seen now are putting it in their email signatures. And what happens there is that it's a link specific to you, and then it's your name and logo in the top left corner. But when your customer clicks on it, they fill in their name, their company name, and their email, phone number, and then they run the rate search now. So let's say it's an import. I don't know the steamship line. I'm going to say it's coming into Chicago, delivering locally. I'm going to say it's coming in the bottom left to BN Logistics Park. And then in the top right, I'm going to say find rates. So now my customer, any action they do here is interactive with my dashboard. So right now it's going to show up on my dashboard that whoever this customer is just did a web search based on the information they entered up top. It's going to show as a trucker, what our rate is for that specific lane for that customer. And then here you can even see the service territory Chicago. And this is where it would be basically red, yellow, or green, showing what the capacity availability is for our company in that region. And then the customer can click on issue quote right from here. And anytime a customer does that, it's going to put it on your dashboard, but it's not guaranteeing you, not guaranteeing you're getting that business. It's just letting you know somebody locked in, they like your quote, they like what you had to offer because they clicked on issue quote to lock in for how long your quote is valid for.
Mm-hmm. So this is basically the entire customer experience you can give to your customers, and it eliminates all those check calls for you, including that second one about capacity, if you have your capacity in there in the calendar. And also, it saves them time. So if you're going to provide your customers with a way to, without having to call you, without having to email back and forth, just to go up and look and check out, okay, what is the rate for this? Then they're also much more likely to do business with you, because who doesn't like to have all of that grunt work taken away from them? I do have a few questions coming in. Someone asked, can you explain how rates are pulled from the website? I'm not fully sure. If you could clarify for that question, that would be awesome, because we do have the Web Connect feature. But if we want to talk about how rates are pulled from your tariff to be generated into quotes or to be generated in these results, can we talk any further about that?
So really the rates, they're pulling from, actually, let me go back here to, it's actually a good question, because we talk about the fact that you can have separate rates for every customer you do business with if you wanted to. Over here in the left nav column is tariff management. So everything under here is what we use to come up with your pricing for every lane that you want to quote on. Once we have all of that set up, down here under connections is where you're going to assign the specific rate set to that connection. So I'm going to click on connections here. And then you can see my connections. These are active. I got incoming or outgoing, but let's say this was an invite that just came in. I would end up then going over to this customer section, say actions, and first time setup, it would say assign rates, not edit. And then here you can see down below, I've got in this demo two locations, Chicago and Houston. I'm going to click on Houston. And then basically for this customer now that I clicked on, what tariff do I want to show them? If I have 20 tariffs listed, I got to go down and scroll down and make sure I assign the correct tariff I want them and their employees to see. For tolls here, how do I want tolls displayed to them? Am I displaying it already in my line haul? Am I going to show it as a separate line item? We can pull it from real-time data, which is the API going to PC Miler. But if you know what you want to charge for tolls in a specific lane, we can also build that up for you as well. Accessorial charges, same thing. Choose the correct one you want that customer to see, the fuel you want them to see, and the chassis charges, rental and positioning based on that. So whatever parameters you have set here then, in this example, are set to these specific ports. So now anytime I run a rate search for this customer in or out of these ports, or the customer runs it on their own, they're going to get the rate set that I've set up here.
Awesome. And so this is what you can do for your connected partners or customers that you already have a relationship with, right? But then we also have those community rates that we were talking about. And that's basically that you set kind of a default profile for anybody who comes in. To say you have your Web Connect on your website and somebody comes and visits your website, they're a prospective customer. They can go in and search up your rates, and the rates they're going to see is that default community rate profile that is available to people who are not yet your customers or are not yet connected to you within DrayMaster. That's correct, right?
That is correct, yes. And
Awesome.
then the brokers, forwarders, 3PLs, they love it then, because the more the truckers that they have connected to here, now they start running rate searches and populating all of the truckers they work with, plus some they don't, that are displayed in the community. Now they're really comparing apples to apples because every trucker is set up the same way.
Awesome. We have another question coming in. It says, when quoting via an email, you have to copy the email address into DrayMaster and the quote comes from DrayMaster, correct?
Yeah, I can go on and answer that one. Yeah, so there's actually two ways that you can send a quote out of DrayMaster. One of them is actually to have it come from DrayMaster. And then the other one is to actually use your own email client. So we have a little, some limitations on what we can do. We kind of generate a template and have it pop up in Outlook for you. We are limited with attachments and things like that. But if you send through DrayMaster, you would just, provide the email, and then it would come from DrayMaster directly.
So I have a question on that to clarify. So when we were going to the quote rate section, and then Travis entered in, show customer information on the quote. If he does enter the email in there, and then they click generate quote, does that then kind of internally connect it? So if you were to click send email afterwards, will it automatically populate the email, or would you have to go ahead and enter in the email of who you're sending it to?
Yeah, so I believe that's actually an enhancement request that we have gotten recently, that we are going to tie those together. As of now, you would still enter the email address manually. But yeah, that's actually a good question, because that's an enhancement that we are actually working on.
Awesome. But I mean, as long as it's just typing in an email, and it's already taking off all of the other work. So if you entered in once, it's just entering it in one more time, and the quote is off in the email. Another question about the bid tool. Stephen asks, is there a benefit of knowing the SSL when putting in a quote or running the bid tool?
Mainly depends on how the trucker's set up, but the quick answer is yes, it does. Because the way when we're setting up the trucking side, it's based on the ramp or port you're going into for which specific steamship line. So for example, I'm going into BNSF Logistics Park to pick up an APL container. As a trucker, I'm going to probably know, if I go into BN Logistics Park for an APL container, whose chassis do I use? Is it a pool chassis? Is it my own chassis? Whose equipment is it? And then based off of that, I know it's okay, there's going to be a positioning charge and how many days of rental are most common. So it's really putting in those factors. If you don't use the steamship line functionality, because you don't know the steamship line, you put the default in there. The default is going to bring back worst case scenario, meaning it's going to put a chassis split on both the front end and the back end, because it doesn't know. So it doesn't mean that, and all truckers are going to be the same in that fashion, because some truckers will say, well, I don't want to miss out an opportunity because it looks like I charge more. If they don't put the steamship line in for that move, it's going to do the same thing for all truckers. It's going to automatically default to provide both the front and back end chassis positioning as well as the rental fees. So I hope that answers it.
Yeah, so I guess the more information you can feed into it if you're generating a quote, or the more information that your customer can put in as they're generating a quote, the more accurate information that can be pulled into the quote that is generated. That's just a whole little loop. But I guess the more information you give, the more you're going to get.
Yes, and the main thing, the biggest benefit is on both sides, the trucker and the customer, in this case, the 3PL forwarder, because it's lowering invoice discrepancies. Prior to DrayMaster and COVID and all of that, a lot of truckers would provide, here's my line haul and my fuel surcharge for that lane. And then after the move's done, add on driver delay if there is anything, the positioning charges and other things that they may have known in the front end, but they didn't do it. They just provided line haul and fuel. This is now providing all the known charges, because then that's going to lower the invoice discrepancy. Your quote is going to be closer to what it was the actual move, which will put it through the invoice process a much quicker.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're kind of coming towards the end. We have one more poll that we want to ask, since you've been asking such great questions. We have one more for you. And our question is, how many times have two people on your team quoted one lane differently? This is something that Travis was telling me from personal experience when he was first teaching me about DrayMaster and walking me through all the system. And I found this very interesting to know. Yeah, a lot of answers coming in.
Yeah, a lot of people will go to quote and maybe they looked at an old tariff or an old rate sheet, and it just caused a lot of confusion for the customer. So with DrayMaster, while the poll's still being done, is it puts everyone on the same page. No matter who's gonna do the quote, it's gonna pull from the exact same tariff that's set up within DrayMaster assigned to that customer. So no matter who does the quote, if you're keeping it internal or even automated, any employee from that company then through the automated process will do a rate search, and they're going to get the same rate no matter who does it.
So I'm going to share the results from it. Again, like I said, we like a little bit of humor in here. So we had the never, my team is telepathic, and congratulations to the few of you whose team is telepathic. That's awesome. But for the rest of us, once or twice, we know our stuff here and there. And we got a few for whom it happens every week. There's a lot of lanes, a lot of people. And that's one of the big problems with, not problems, but pain points for enterprise fleets is, more money, more problems, more people, more problems, more lanes, more problems. So the larger your operation gets, the easier it is for things to get mixed up. And so this works for small companies, for owner operators, but also for enterprise fleets. I think it's also most important to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And when you have all your rates securely in DrayMaster and everyone can access them securely, then you're not going to go through that pain of like, oh no, John coded it wrong and Sally coded it a different way. And now Jeremiah thinks that it's something else. And oh my goodness. So it leads that very basic point of just all of us being on the same page.
Yeah, and Marina, I just wanted to add on to, while you were discussing, people having access to this, that's one of the advantages of DrayMaster is that, this isn't on-premise installed software. This isn't, everybody's used software in this space that, is kind of legacy software or, kind of cumbersome or has to be installed. This is cloud-based software. We're running on, very up-to-date technology with this. And so it's globally accessible. I mean, if you have a browser and an internet connection, you have access to DrayMaster, so, it's a responsive application. So it works fine on iPads, on mobile devices, so really, you're never away from, which, mixed feelings on never being away from the office. But, if you did have a situation where, you wanted to, just, connect up or touch in with what's going on in DrayMaster, that's available, so that's definitely a significant advantage of using, cloud-based, solutions like this.
Yeah, everyone can access it from anywhere at any time, whenever you need it. And so when dealing with customers who are in different time zones, that's extremely important as well. And also, so it's not tied to just being in the office. You can always get back to someone if you need it. We have a few more questions. So one, Travis, that I want to ask you, as a trucking company, how would I gauge the ROI of adding a tool like DrayMaster into my operation? What would you say to that?
So I touched base on a little bit, but biggestly the ROI comes from understanding, what you're doing today and what that's costing you. One of the couple questions I ask is, how many people are quoting rates? What's the average, salary plus benefits for that person or those people? And then how many quotes on average do you do a day? And how many minutes would you say it takes you to respond to each of those? That's going to give you the baseline idea of, how much time and money you're spending on a daily or weekly basis quoting. If you know enough of your data, you can then use that information to compare how many of those quotes actually turn into an actual move. A lot of companies don't know that yet. So based on the data that you get when you sign up for DrayMaster, and after using it, you can start piecing some of those together. And then you take it one step further. And I mentioned the API connectivity earlier about connecting to a CRM. We do have an extensive API library that truckers will use to connect to their TMS system. And a lot of that stems from, okay, now I know and store my rates in DrayMaster, but I live in my TMS and I can pull the rates directly into based on the bill to customer. Now you start using that data to compare what you quoted versus what you actually moved. So
that kind of ties into the last question that we've gotten. It says, we don't use DrayMaster, but is there an equivalent tool that we can apply in Profit Tools? I mean, I would say that this is the tool that you would apply in Profit Tools because of the TMS connectivity. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, and unless I'm missing part of the question there, we do have the API connectivity into Profit Tools from the trucker perspective. So, and that is tested and working. So it's a matter of, getting set up in DrayMaster. And then if you're interested, I'd be happy to, book some time with me and I can go over the specifics with you. There may be some details you're concerned about based on how you handle things without DrayMaster today, but I'd be happy to go over that with you.
Awesome. And to tie off the ROI component, I think we did want to talk about kind of what the pricing structure is. If someone is interested in adding DrayMaster into the operation, if they're an existing Envase customer, whether it be Profit Tools, CompCare, have a different TMS, or if they're just looking to use DrayMaster as a standalone product because it can be used standalone, here are our pricing. Yeah.
So the pricing is simple on the trucking side. It's basically, for the first location here on top, it's $175 a month if you have one location. Each additional location is $100 a month. So 2 location process would be $275. If you want the web connect feature, that's that link that you can put on your website or your email signature. It's $25 per month per location you want that added. And then depending on the API connectivity, what we're connecting to, there could be an API connectivity fee, a setup fee of one time for $500.
Awesome. So basically in that example that you're using the demo account, we had the Chicago location and the Houston location. So if they just had Chicago, that'd be $175 a month. But with Houston, that adds another 100. So that's $275. And they also had the Web Connect in the demo location. So that would be $300 a month. But so with that, we're taking up the jobs of not taking up the jobs, but there's 3 people or 4 people that could be functioning, trying to just do this thing for your company. But if you're going to pay $300 for DrayMaster, those team members can be using their time on much more important things that really do require that human touch, like servicing your customers and talking to them and discovering new things.
And that's why we focus more on a location basis as opposed to a license or a user fee, because we want everyone using it. The more they use it, the better everything runs together. So the one correction I just want to make here is that they do have Web Connect in 2 locations. It's $50 here. It's $25 per location. So they'd be at $325 for Chicago, Houston, and the Web Connect to be offered at both of those locations.
And that's the kind of the majority of what at least a medium-sized fleet would need, and some are only in 1 location, so that does chop off another $125. But I mean, we can agree that it's it's pretty reasonably priced, especially if one person, if it's taking them a week to respond to 1 bid package, that person's pay, that person's time, it all kind of comes back around. So whether you use DrayMaster for the bid tool just to respond to RFPs, you already see the ROI coming from that, but there are so many other tools that come along with it. So I really hope everyone enjoyed this webinar. We did our best to give you the full package about responding to RFPs, using the bid tool, talking about some of the other features. I want to thank everybody for asking their questions and for joining. And thank you so much, Andrew and Travis, for joining us. Travis, how can they reach you? What is the best next step? Can you tell us?
If you go to the Envase Technologies website and go to rate management, you can book specific time with me and we can go over what your specific needs are, what you're looking to do. Or maybe you're already ready to go, and then we would finalize the deal and get you started. If there's I know we have some existing customers on here. If you do want to go into finite detail on the bid tool and that process, it's best to book training through Nikki. But again, if you want that, please come through me. I'll get you set up with either a demo with myself or the training that's needed with Nikki.
Awesome. And we'll be sending you a follow-up email after this with the webinar recording, all of those links that we mentioned, so you don't really have to go searching. So be on the lookout for that. Again, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have everybody. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.